Welcome to Dulce Independent Schools District Test Security Training, 1 of 2. Test security training is mandated for all districts by the New Mexico Public Education Assessment Bureau. Back in September, I remotely attended the District Test Coordinator training. In this training, school districts were asked to prepare for spring state standardized testing as we normally do. Currently, we are uncertain of what the future holds for state standardized testing due to COVID-19, but we will aim to be ready. Test security training required for the administration of state standardized tests. A standardized test is any form of test that, number 1, requires all test takers to answer the same questions or a selection of questions from common bank of questions in the same way, and that number 2 is scored in a standard or consistent manner, which makes it possible to compare the relative performance of individual students or groups of students. Some of these tests include SAT School Day with Essay for Seniors, PSAT 10, Axis for ELLs, Dynamic Learning Maps, New Mexico ASR, NAMASA ELA, and NAMASA Math. In this presentation, we will cover standardized testing procedures and requirements, roles, responsibilities, licensing, test administration, and security. Licensure requirements for District Test Coordinator. District Test Coordinators must hold one of the following valid PED licenses from the state of New Mexico: School Instructor, Administrator, School Counselor, or Student Success Advisor. School Test Coordinator licensure requirements. STCs must hold one of the following valid PED licenses from the state of New Mexico: School Instructor, Administrator, School Counselor, Student Success Advisor, or Instructional Support Provider. Test Administrator licensure requirements. TA must hold one of the following valid PED licenses from the state of New Mexico: School Instructor, Administrator, School Counselor, Student Success Advisor, or Instructional Support Provider. Proctors. Proctors are generally educational assistants, usually within the school system. Proctors do not have to hold one of the approved PED licenses. No proctor should assist with a group that has a child who is a close relative. Examples: child, grandchild, niece, nephew, etc. Proctors must attend trainings deemed mandatory by the DTC or STC. Proctors may serve as hall monitors or restroom escorts to assist test administrators as they monitor students who are testing. Test administrators and proctors must have signed a required confidentiality agreement, which will be provided for you at the end of this presentation, follow all testing procedures, maintain the security of assessment materials, and report any testing irregularities to principal and STC within the required time frame. Secure materials procedures. TAs should sign out secure materials prior to an assessment session and should check in materials as soon as possible after the conclusion of a session. Testing tickets are considered secure testing materials. They should be maintained in a locked location when not being used during an assessment session. TAs are responsible for the security of materials while in their possession. Secure test materials should not be left in an unlocked classroom with the teacher absent from the room. Scratch paper. Once scratch paper has been used, it becomes secure material. Scratch paper is to be returned to STC with the testing tickets or booklets at the end of each test session. DTC or STC will be responsible for destroying scratch paper. Usernames and passwords of students and school personnel are not to be shared. Students are to completely log off computers at the end of testing sessions. Test materials or student responses are not to be saved, reproduced, paraphrased, or discussed in any manner. Testing environment. Possession of cell phones, smartwatches, earbuds, or other personal devices with internet capability is prohibited in the testing environment. It is recommended that teachers collect such devices from students before entering the testing environment. TAs and proctors may use their cell phones for communication about testing purposes only. Anyone monitoring during a testing session should not be using a cell phone or other device for personal reasons. TAs and proctors will maintain a classroom environment that allows students to concentrate and perform to the best of their ability. Testing environment continued. Classrooms should be set up so that students are not able to view another student's computer screen. Reviewing or taking images of any kind of the assessment are prohibited. Visual aids in classrooms should be removed prior to testing. Examples include the following, but not limited to: posters of multiplication tables, number lines, math facts or formulas, writing aids, vocabulary lists, alphabets, maps, charts, and any instructional posters. Any other materials that might lead to a student answer. When students complete a session, they may sit quietly and read a book. Reading is the only allowed activity until all students have finished a session. Test administrators should not instruct students to perform any other activity, such as classwork or computer games, during this time. Makeup sessions. Makeup sessions, as we all know, are unavoidable. Makeup sessions should be scheduled in order to ensure that all students are tested. Makeup sessions are required to still follow the guidelines for security and administration. Testing irregularities. First of all, what is a testing irregularity? An irregularity is defined as any incident in the handling or administration of an assessment that results in the ability to question the accuracy of the data or security of the test. Any incident that impacts testing must be reported to STC, and by STC to principals and DTC. DTC must notify PD within 3 days of incidents that constitute testing irregularities and must submit a testing irregularity report within 10 days. Avoiding irregularities before they happen. An irregularity leads to one of two outcomes. The assessment results remain valid or the results are invalidated. When an assessment is invalidated, a student may or may not be able to retest. Scheduling. It is critical that sufficient time to complete a testing session is given before lunch or before the end of the day. Schedule enough time for allowable breaks. Before testing, make sure students are correctly matched to the SSID on the label or ticket. Make sure accommodations and accessibility features are assigned. Make sure technology and materials are ready and working properly. Finally, make sure students do not have unauthorized electronic devices on them. Monitor actively during and after test sessions. Some examples of irregularities include student cheating or helping another student to cheat, student using an unauthorized electronic device, including a cell phone, earbuds, or other listening device, students having access to internet, student becomes disruptive, student leaves testing environment without permission. Testing environment contains resources that provide help to student answering test questions. Examples, wall posters. Student takes a test using the wrong SSID. Some examples of incidents that are not irregularities include power outage causes testing to be interrupted, but students are supervised by TA during the interruption and the testing resumes as normal. Student needs to leave the testing location to use the restroom, but is supervised by a proctor while walking to and from the restroom. Fire drill occurs during test. Students leave the testing location, are under supervision during the entirety of the fire drill, return to the testing location, and resume testing. Student begins testing without an accommodation that should be assigned. TA realizes it before student has answered any questions, assigns the accommodation, and student completes the test with accommodation. TAs must report such incidents to DTC. The DTC will document these incidents but not report them to PD as irregularities. Testing Irregularity Reporting Form. The purpose of this form is to be used as a document to report the occurrence of a testing irregularity. Definition of a testing irregularity: an incident in the handling or administration of a test that results in questioning the accuracy of the data or security of the test that may or may not result in an invalidation. Procedure for recording. When a testing irregularity occurs, the district must report the incident to PD by email within 3 days. In addition, all sections of this form must be completed by district personnel and submitted to the Assessment Bureau within 10 days of the incident. Universal tools. Universal tools are available for any student to use and provide all students with equal opportunities to demonstrate what they know and can do without changing the construct being measured or the difficulty of the item. Examples include scratch paper, highlighter, and calculator. Accessibility features. Accessibility features are available to any student with or without an IEP, but must be designated by either a SAT or IEP team of educators in response to individual student needs. Examples of some of these accessibility features include color contrast, directions read aloud, clarified or repeated, headphones as noise buffer, human reader or text-to-speech on a math or science test. Accommodations are available only to students with an IEP or 504 plan or for ELs if assigned by a school-based team of at least 3 school staff on a case-by-case basis and justified by data. Accommodations are changes in procedures or materials that ensure equitable access to instruction and assessment content. Examples include human reader or text-to-speech on an ELA assessment, calculator on non-calculator section, extended time on a time test, Braille. In contrast to accommodations, modifications give students an unfair advantage on assessments. Modifications are changes in student response or test administration that give students an unfair advantage on the assessment. Modifications change the construct of what the assessment is intended to measure and will lead to invalid test results. Accommodations and irregularities. Administering an assessment with an accommodation that is not in a student's legal plan is an irregularity. Administering an assessment without an accommodation that is in a student's plan is an irregularity. Avoid irregularities by checking and double-checking which accommodations are assigned to students. Thank you for your participation in this mandated training. Please continue to quiz and certification following this presentation. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact me, Estefanita Beta, your district test coordinator, or reference the link above on this slide. Finally, signed copy of staff confidentiality agreement attached to this training. Please scan and email back to me or submit via interoffice mail to district office. Thank you for your time and see you next semester for round 2 of test security.